Well, I think we'll just go ahead and kick it off. We have an ambitious agenda, so and hopefully you guys brought questions. So we're going to kick it off with I have some initial starter questions for our guests. So tonight we've got Kerry Finsland, who is the founder of Taplister, and he does a myriad of other things as well. He definitely knows the craft brewing space, and he also knows social. So I think he was a perfect guest for this week, week 7, talking about social media marketing and craft beer. So I'm going to go ahead and the first question, Kerry, I think it would be helpful if you could maybe tell the students a little bit about your story, how you got into craft brewing, and kind of what you're up to today.
Sure, yeah, that's great. So, you know, living in Portland, Oregon, we're very fortunate to have lots of breweries, over 50 in our city, and it's kind of hard not to get into craft beer when you live here. I like to tell people, it rains a lot here, so we have to do something, so we drink craft beer. That's the way I look at it. So I don't know, maybe 9 years ago, I started going to a lot of beer festivals in Portland, and the gentleman who runs the Oregon Brewers Guild was like, hey, why don't you, start writing about beer? So then he connected me with someone, and I started writing about beer for a local paper, and then from that I got to did a ton of different projects, and probably like a lot of you just got really passionate for it, and maybe kind of volunteer your time for free helping out some friends or became friends with bar owners and brewery owners, and so I just started working on different projects just to learn more about the beer space, and back then that was really early on with Twitter and Facebook, so I just was very curious to see how can I use these tools, these grassroots marketing tools to help kind of grow these small brands. And so I worked with a really popular called Green Dragon, one of the top-rated beer bars in the country. Did some stuff for them early on, and just kind of evolved, did more and more stuff, started writing for different publications, started doing a radio show about beer, and then about 5 years ago, started Taplister with a group of beer friends, I guess, that we kind of just knew each other, and we want to make it easier to find beers on tap, and kind of started with a side project, and then kind of evolved from there. Then today, I do some of my own beer events. I do a Rye Beer Festival every year. I'm on the board of Portland Beer Week, and yeah, just fairly active in the beer scene. So yeah, just like you guys, very passionate about craft beer. One of my questions I have for everyone is, I already got a little of an idea into some people are home brewers, but how many people that are on the call today are actually home brewers or used to be home brewers?
Yeah, maybe just in the chat section, kind of raise your hand if you're a home brewer. Me. Cool. Tom. Awesome.
The reason I ask that is because you understand the passion, and that's where I speak from is truly the passion of the beer. And that's why you guys are starting these businesses out. And sorry, that's my cat's tail. You're starting these businesses because you're passionate about beer, and this is something that was, hobby that turned into a full-time job, or you're trying to make it into a full-time job. So, we're not here to make a quick buck. We're here to make, a great business. And what I love about craft beer is it's small businesses, it's an artisan product, and the community is amazing. I mean, I travel all around the world for beer, and I just love meeting new people. And hopefully you guys come to Portland, look me up, and we'll grab some beers.
Yay. Great. So tell us a little bit about the Taplister story, Kerry.
Yeah, so about 5 years ago, there's a group of us that kind of get together, and we kind of had different concepts of trying to make it easier to find beers on tap. And I was just kind of tired of having to call bars and what do you guys have on tap? Because I make, probably like a lot of you, I make my nighting and my dining decisions based on where the good beer is. Or at least go to a good bar that is near a restaurant or something that has food too. But that's kind of what I kind of started as a necessity for just making it easier to find beers on tap. One guy who was part of it wanted to make it easier to find beers on tap by having these pub cams in bars that would record the tap list on a chalkboard. And we did that for a little bit, didn't quite work out as well. And then the thing that I was really interested in was making a search engine using Twitter, which is kind of geeky to find beers on tap. So not to get too geeky, but we basically, with Twitter, we used hashtags that like it would be, you type a certain way, like, Widmer IPA on tap, and then it'd be on tap PDX. So every city, we created a hashtag for it. When you enter that into the system, into Twitter, we had a little robot scripting we wrote that would automatically pull that information in and put it into our database. You could even on Twitter ask, hey, what's this beer on tap? And we ended up winning a social media award through the SOMI Awards, which I know Lisa is part of as well, several years back. And from there, we just kind of expanded. We were just in Portland. People were like, I want this in my town. And I'm not a web developer. My background's in marketing and sales, and I can definitely geek out in tech, but I'm not the one that's coding it. And long story short, we just kind of expanded, and had a group of us together. Then some people left because they were busy, and I ended up kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. A couple of years ago, I was just, it was a great hobby and everything. And then I said, I'm going to go for it, and I bought out my last partner. Raised about $250,000 and got accepted to a technology incubator in Portland called Upstart Labs, and kind of went for it. And we've done some great things. Unfortunately, like a lot of businesses, we ran out of cash flow. So I'm still doing it on a part-time level as we try to kind of rescale it. And now my day job is I actually sell software to craft breweries that handles business management, from accounting, production, inventory management, and it's called orchestrated beer. So I'm still very involved, and now I'm learning a really interesting side on the numbers and business side of the business. So, okay, that's enough of that.
Oh, that's great. And so my question I'm left with, did you find that it was difficult to monetize Taplister? Was that always kind of an ongoing battle, is how to monetize it?
Yeah, we're going right now. We have about 70 customers where they pay us every month, and it's growing and everything. But the real challenge is that, just like starting a brewery, it always costs way more than you think it will. It always takes a lot more time. And I'm not a web developer, and I never really had a great partner who was a co-founder with me who just could handle the development side on everything. And so for me, I have to wear a lot of hats, just like you guys. You're handling brewing, accounting, your fun TTV reports, and all the other fun stuff. So long story short, it's just you need to have the right team. That's so important with any business you start. And we just didn't really quite have the right team and stuff. So now we're kind of refocusing and trying to find what that means. If we need to partner with some other businesses or what to kind of take it to the next level.
Great. So let's kind of make this conversation a little bit more general about beer apps, and maybe start with Taplister as an example, Kerry. But what, in terms of, if I'm brewing beer and I want to get the word out, I know that there are a lot of beer apps out there. How do we start thinking about that? What types of things do craft brewers need to keep in mind when thinking about the app space, specifically like getting their beers listed?
And that actually relates to the app space and beyond. So one of the challenges as a bar owner is going to have is that they don't know much about the beer. So often, they get the beer from the distributor on their Tuesday shipment, and the distributor is not giving the information about the beer. They ain't getting anything from the brewery, so they put up the information about the beer, and they don't know how to market their beer well. So it's all about educating everyone in kind of the beer ecosystem about is it an IPA? What's the background story? How hoppy it is? What are all the different ingredients? Is it a collaboration beer? I mean, all these different things are really important. So with Taplister, we help solve a couple problems. One is if you're looking for a particular beer on tap, we help you find where that's available. Again, it's crowdsourced, so not only is we update stuff, but it's really the users that update the stuff, and then the bar owners and such. So you want to make it as easy as possible for the bar owners to know information about your beer. Most bar owners, what they're going to do is they're going to go onto Google and type in the name of that beer and try to find it, and it's a pain in the butt. So our solution solves that because we interact with and integrate with one of the largest beer databases in the world, which I'm sure some people on this conference know about, is ratebeer.com. And we have over 250,000 beers in our database, and we pull in a lot of that information from ratebeer.com. So one of the first things I would do is I would make sure you're monitoring all these beer sites and your information is accurate. Because you go on there and people will say, oh, man, this stuff's just not accurate. So ratebeer.com is a great source, and then Beer Advocate. Those are kind of the two big database websites that provide information about beer and have huge communities. So you can go on those websites and just monitor them, see what people are saying about you, and then you can set up an account and you can contact them if information is incorrect and have it changed. So that's a great foundation, because a lot of people, what they're doing, especially with ratebeer.com, not Beer Advocate, but ratebeer.com, not to get too geeky, but there's something called the API. An API is kind of like a fire hose information. So with Taplister, we provide an API to our database, to our customers, so they can access the information. Ratebeer.com does that for us. So we take their information in this fire hose and put it into our system and get information about beers and IBU, ABV, descriptions, and so on and so forth. So you want to make sure that you're in these places. It's just like, kind of like, I don't know if Lisa, you talked about this, kind of like local SEO. You want to make sure you're in the major directories, you know, for your business, so that you're getting pulled up, because Google and Yelp and so on and so forth. Other websites interact with that. So the first thing I would suggest is look at Beer Advocate and ratebeer.com. Make sure your business is on there. You can add it on there. So your location and all your beers. That's a top thing. The second thing is there's a social app called Untappd, which is very popular. I've never met the guys before, but I definitely talked to them before, and they had an app that just exploded in the last 3 years or so. And it's kind of like Foursquare is a website app that you use to check in where you're going. Right here at this place. Foursquare, Untappd is basically the beer. My cat just ran by. Foursquare is basically, Untappd is basically the beer version of Foursquare. So you can say, I'm drinking this beer right now. You check into it. So it's a nice way to keep track of what you're drinking and everything. And so even home brewers can actually list their beers on there. And I'm sure that some people on the call today have used Untappd before and such. So that's another good website to kind of pay attention to. So there's kind of there's the first kind of thing to look at is like these resource websites. So Rate Beer and Beer Advocate, great starting point. The second thing is looking at some of these social apps. So Untappd is a great one to look at. And the third thing to look at is kind of like what Taplister is in, kind of the discovery type app where people are trying to find new beers and discover new beers. So our tagline is Discover Craft Beer, because we want people to learn about new things and transition over. Maybe they start off with the Coors and then they went to a Blue Moon and now they're drinking Firestone Walker IPA or something. So we want to help transition people to really good beer. And so Taplister is a good resource for that. And the challenge is, just like with anything, beers on tap changes all the time. It's tough. So there's certain services that are really good in certain cities. So like Taplister is pretty good in like Portland and the state of Texas and Washington State and some other states. New York, there's one called Beer Menus that's very popular. They're probably the first one to come out with this kind of concept. There's one called Tap Hunter out of San Diego. So these are other apps to kind of get an idea for, and in your particular town, see which one's the most popular and start there. If you have more time, then use both of them. It's just like Twitter and Facebook. They're both great resources, but we all only have so much time to use these. So you don't really want to, pardon my French, half-ass this. You want to have a presence. And now there's Instagram and all this other stuff. It gets overwhelming. So if it was me, I would start with the source of the beer and start with Rate Beer and Beer Advocate initially. And then from a marketing standpoint, especially if you're self-distributing your beers and you're not using a distributor, it's a great way. Hey, let's enter this information to let people know where our beers are on tap. And most of our services, including Taplister, we let you do that for free. We have free and paid options. So that's kind of the initial concept, I would say, for you guys to look at.
Great, and I think that speaks to Theo's question, which is specifically is, do you have small breweries updating where their own beers are on tap? And Theo, I don't know if you meant Taplister.com specifically. I think Kerry basically just answered that. It sounds like yes, indeed, small breweries are updating their own beers that are on tap on those platforms.
Yeah, definitely do it, because honestly, it's a great marketing tool. Like some people will say to a bar owner, they'll say, oh yeah, we came in because we found this on Taplister or XYZ website, and because they're, or Facebook, or wherever it is, and because they're using these marketing tools. Also, if your competitors aren't on there, I mean, there's places that, Spokane, Washington is an example where the craft beer scene's grown there a lot over the last 3 years, and my parents-in-law live there, so I go there a couple times a year, and I've seen it evolve and pretty much been to every place in town. And they really got excited about Taplister early on because like they were a small community and they didn't really have a big beer scene. And over the years, it's kind of grown. And then there's some people on there that are smaller breweries that are entering that information in. And if you're doing it, no one else is doing it, that's kind of, as a starting point, you're the first to do it. And if people are searching for something interesting, maybe it's an IPA or it's a stout or whatever it may be, it kind of gives you a little bit of competitive advantage, so something you can kind of play around with. You can also encourage, if you have a distributor, to use Taplister or other resources to kind of help your tap list as well. But yeah, that's kind of that.
Excellent. So is there, and you've done a great job outlining kind of the top directory sites, specifically kind of drilling down when these, when you consider going to these sites and listing what you've got, are there any, can you give just some maybe specific pointers around just things to keep in mind, like, like you were mentioning local search engine optimization, there's a pretty specific list. You want to make sure that your listings are consistent and you're using your keywords and you've got your categories. Are there certain considerations that you think, craft brewers need to keep in mind when creating these listings and directories?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, how I would do it is I'd approach it with, find the key websites, which I kind of list those. I mean, definitely Beer Advocate and Rate Beer are a good starting point. Make sure your beers are in there. Just create an Excel spreadsheet with all your information there. Keep track of that, and then you'll need to enter the information yourself. But if you enter those two places, it feeds lots of other websites, especially ratebeer.com. So
okay.
That's what I really would recommend as a starting point for just kind of getting going. Then once you've done that, then I would start looking at kind of these websites like Taplister. You kind of find beers on tap and start just playing around with it. You play around with it and maybe be really avid user for maybe a month and just see what happens. If it works out, great, continue using it. If it doesn't work out, then maybe you put your focus somewhere else. But we definitely have people that are small breweries that they kind of benefit from it more because they don't have the marketing budget to do a lot of things, but sometimes they'll have the time or maybe a friend that can help them out.
Great information. And so Tom is asking specifically kind of back to Taplister, is it possible to follow places and get updates with their tap list changes?
So that's a feature we don't have currently. It's something we'd love to add. I mean, that's definitely been on the roadmap for a long time. Just haven't had a chance to build that out yet. Too many other features first. But right now what you would do is you do a search for a particular location. It would come up when you go to their page. Or you look by a location like, I'm in Portland, Oregon. I want to see where a specific beer is on tap. So yeah, right now we don't have that feature, but something that we'd like to have in the future.
Great, perfect. Thanks for the question, Tom. So
one quick caveat on that though is with Taplister, we integrate with your Twitter and Facebook though. So if people are following you on Twitter and Facebook and you update through our system, it pushes out automatically. They'll see updates through that.
Oh, that's a nice feature. So I know that just from kind of the research that I've been doing around for this week that there are quite a few beer apps out there. So so maybe we can just briefly talk about is it still a consideration to build apps at this point? There's for a period there's this marketing question about building your own app, and I'm wondering, Kerry, from your perspective, if at this point the market is so saturated that is there a need to build an app, or is it really more of a strategy of kind of piggybacking on these apps that have already been built? And maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, good question. I mean, honestly, I think everyone, and when you're a small business, you want all the cool bells and whistles, but when it comes down to it, what's really important. And maybe you have a friend or a customer, I can make a great app. In my experience, I've been involved with a lot of those things where people want to make something for me, and it just hasn't worked out that well. And your time and to give them that energy to do it. We'll do it for free. Give us some beer. Sometimes it works. There's no question about it. But I would say probably 9 times out of 10, it's going to fail. And you really need that. Why not use something that's already out there? What I would suggest is creating a WordPress website and using the mobile plugin on it, because then it will work on anyone's smartphone. Because that's the other challenge. All this stuff is so expensive. You create an iPhone app. Great, I'm an iPhone guy myself. And how about those Android people? Then they get upset and everything because you don't have an Android app. So Like right now, we have an iPhone app, and we like to do an Android app. It's on a roadmap, but we have a mobile-friendly website that works on any device. So and mobile is very important. So WordPress is a great platform. I don't, have you talked about WordPress at all? Or
I have, absolutely. Huge fan.
Oh, WordPress is great. It's inexpensive setup. You don't have to pay a developer every time you want to make a change to something. So I would recommend doing like a WordPress website and then using a mobile plugin on there. That's the way to go. There are other people out there. I've even talked to some people. They've approached me recently, and we'll see what happens, that are actually building kind of a software as a service type application where, hey, I will create you a kind of a templated app that's kind of customized with your brand for X number of dollars. So, excuse me, I think you will be starting seeing some of those, and those might be something that makes sense. But to build your own, yeah, I mean, if you can, great, but I would personally focus on other things. Your focus is making good beer. You know, that's what your focus is. You know, that's the problem with, you know, when we're small business owners, we're wearing so many hats, and we think we can do everything ourselves. So that's kind of how I would approach that situation.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the landscape in general. And my question is, how important do you think social media apps are in the craft brewing industry? And do you feel that it should be an integral part of any social media strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I mean, here's one example. So like with our solution, when you update your tap list through our solution, and we actually work with breweries and stuff too, like Oscar Blues and Ballast Point, if anyone's heard of those places. But so when they push their updates through our system, it's automatically posted to Twitter and Facebook, or they have the ability to edit the message. So for a lot of times, what I've found is that when people are tweeting about their beers on tap and they're using their own Twitter handle, especially bars, if a bar says, you know, I have, let's say, Flowers to Walker Union Jack IPA on tap, often that brewery is going to, that bar promoted that on Twitter, very often those things will be retweeted. So then other people are then talking about that beer and forwarding that to everyone else. So I think just from a social aspect, you should use some of these apps because they're pushing out information to other resources too. And then, you know, Beer Advocate and RateBeer.com, they've been around since around 2000 roughly. So they're old websites, and they don't necessarily have all the cool, flashy, new-looking websites and apps. So especially Rate Beer, what they've done, they partner with other people. And again, that comes out to that data resource. So if you're involved in Rate Beer, it's going to push to other places. You're involved in Beer Advocate. They're not as friendly as giving up their information, but it's still a great resource that you should be paying attention to. Untapped is you know, it's another good one to take a look at as well, because there's a lot of people that are checking into beers on there, and it's a way for you to kind of let people know what's going on. You can create you can create badges on there. You have to pay them to do that, but you know, maybe you have a big promotion or something, and you know, maybe it's St. Patrick's Day and you have an Irish Stout on tap, and you want to create a special badge. You know, you can talk to them, and you can pay them. They'll create a badge. Everyone checks in that day. Unfortunately, for small businesses, that really doesn't make a lot of sense to do that for the cost and everything. For, you know, larger regional and stuff brands, it makes more sense. Or if it's like a festival or something. But it's still something to take a look at, Untapped. As something kind of to get listed on, and you can see the activity level too with Untapped. You know, how many people have checked into certain beers and such. They provide analytics on, I believe it's paid. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but analytics for business owners to kind of understand what people are, you know, saying about their beers and such.
Great. So one thing that I noticed when I was doing some of my research was that RateBeer.com and Beer Advocate they are prominently visible in Google search engine, organic search engine results, right? So it's a good idea, you know, for some of these maybe more general craft brewing terms to make sure that you are listed on those sites too. You know, it's another good kind of strategic reason to engage with these sites. Kerry, do you know, are there paid plans? So it sounds like maybe there are, but for example, you know, is it like I can go to Rate Beer and pay them more money for my brand to be more visible on that site? Do they have those types of plans available?
So they have, like, if you're a consumer of the site, you can pay, I think it's $20 or $30 a year. I forgot off the top of my head, and that gives you some more access to the website, like different tracking capabilities and stuff. From a business perspective, it's more about advertising on the website, like kind of traditional banner advertising, things like that. They do have different partner programs they do with like Whole Foods. And so I work with Whole Foods as well for Taplister. We have some TV screens that show beers on tap in some of their locations and stuff. And then Rate Beer, if you go to some of the Whole Foods around the country, you'll see these little printed things that say, you know, rated on Rate Beer like a 99 or something like that. And those are great. Those are great marketing pieces too. So there is a way for you to access information. I think even for businesses, it's not that much money. Maybe it's like $30, but I'll have to look into that in the future. That's a good question. But what's great about that education, if you got a great rating on Rate Beer, then and that your beer is getting in a grocery store, let's say like Whole Foods, and other places are printing this out too. It's kind of like the wine rating you see at some wine stores and stuff like that. So if I see a beer that's new and came in and it's got like a 90-some rating, I'm probably going to try that beer out. I mean, because it's got a great rating and stuff. It is a crowdsourced site, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. But you know, you got keep track of everything. But yeah, I definitely would suggest you kind of looking further into Rate Beer and seeing what makes sense to information to put on there and such.
So have you, another point of discussion that's come up in past live sessions, particularly around Yelp and like reviews on Yelp, I think it applies here to these types of rating sites. Have you seen any successful campaigns implemented where brewers or business owners have successfully incited their consumers to give them positive reviews? Is there any way, what's your take on that? Like, you know,
like kind of opening up Pandora's box with reviews. And I used to work at, as a background, I used to work for another review website called City Search, and I used to work for Groupon, so I've been in that kind of space for a long time. That's kind of a day job while I do all this other fun beer stuff. But I have not seen that yet, really, personally. I'm sure there's some people doing it out there. I think part of it is that craft beer fans are pretty tough on that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, Yelp is kind of tough on it, but Yelp is a much broader audience. You know, you could have someone who's a major foodie on there, or someone that just likes to go out to a local bar. But with like these sites like Rate Beer and Beer Advocate, it's a pretty tight-knit community. I mean, and to tell you the truth, Rate Beer and Beer Advocate have different people that do bottle shares around the country. Like I've been to like a Beer Advocate bottle share here in Portland. Well, a bunch of users get together and say, hey, we're going to go to this place and we're going to get a bunch of unique beers out and try them and everything. So so I've not really seen that. I mean, that's kind of a slippery slope, I would say. I would say the thing that you could definitely, you know, just like what Yelp says, you know, don't like force people to write a review and like reward them. You know, just with a grain of salt, say, hey, you know, maybe in some of your marketing materials, maybe on your printed menu at your bar or your tasting room or your brew pub, you mentioned, hey guys, we're on Rate Beer. I'd love you to write a review for us or something. That's something you could consider trying to do it, but I've actually never seen that before personally.
Right, exactly. And so maybe the tactic is not to even specifically ask for reviews, but just to make it really obvious to your customers that you're there, right? Like, hey, well, guess what? We're on ratebeer.com. Like, check us out on Beer Advocate, you know, or those are places that are valuable for the consumer because they're, you know, the directory sites that if your brand advocates are going to be interested in that anyway, and they can go there, and then once they're there, if they love you, if they're that 10 on that scale of 1 to 10 where they recommend you, then chances are you're kind of priming the pump that while they're there, they may write a review for you. So kind of giving them the information without explicitly asking is probably a good way to go. And you have to be careful. Nobody likes to be asked to necessarily write a positive review, right? It's kind of, it's a little bit passé these days, I think.
The other thing I would say, too, is that you have to look at it, depending on where you're located, who's your target audience. So because you're a craft brewery, yes, when you're a new place, someone like me is going to check you out because I have to go to every brewery ever I can go to and give you a try and keep going back and try you out. So you're going to have your diehards. But you got to remember, like those craft beer diehards that are Rate Beer and something like that, it's a small percentage of people that are actually your customers. You have to look at kind of the broader range where you have people, they have a local person that, there's a new brewery in town, I'm going to check it out. You know, maybe they're a Coors Light drinker or something, and they'll come in, maybe they'll have a a Hellas beer, a light lager of some sort. And then they're trying your beer. Oh, this is actually a IPA, or just trying different flavors out and everything. So you got to realize that what is the best time to put your resources towards, and Facebook and Twitter are great for that. I mean, that's a broader audience beyond just the beer geeks.
So I know that some of the students have been specifically asking about crowdfunding, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to have Kerry maybe just give your thoughts on Kickstarter campaigns, kind of an overview for those students that maybe don't know much about it, and then specifically drilling down into kind of things to consider if you're looking to try to crowdfund a campaign.
So crowdfunding has become really popular. And when it first came out, as far as breweries getting involved, probably around 3 years ago when people were starting to do it, and they were really early adopters, and they really benefited from it. Nowadays, so many people are trying to crowdfund; it's really difficult, and it's hard to raise that money. So you have to set realistic goals. So I've been involved in several. I've consulted on Kickstarter campaigns, and one of them was trying to do a beer movie. He was probably 20 grand off what he needed. And he's like, hey, Kerry, can I meet with you? We had like a week and a half to figure this out. And I said, honestly, there's no way it's going to happen. I mean, it's just, the goal is too large, and certain sites like Kickstarter, for example, if you don't reach your goal, you're out of luck. If you use like Indiegogo, you can set goals, and if you don't reach the full goal, you at least get something. And then all these different websites also will take different, kind of commissions off of this as well. But I've also invested in some ones before that just for fun. I think it's fun to invest in these. Like there's one in Texas I invested in, probably 3 years ago, like $25, and I was like, heck yeah, I'll help them out. And a friend of mine did a movie about women in the craft beer industry, and I invested a bunch of money into hers and stuff because I really believed in the project. So I think you have to have something really newsworthy. So, a video is so important, a good video. Some people's videos are just honestly really bad. So this is a time to kind of call in some favors. If you have a friend that maybe is an amateur photographer who maybe has a nice camera, they can help you out. That's definitely worth it. So kind of have a story. If you're just, hey, I want to raise some money and this is what we're doing. What's the story behind it? Why do you love craft beer so much? What's unique about your brand? I mean, some people that are starting out are, they're donating a certain amount of money towards charity. That's their, very goodwill-oriented business. Other people are maybe in a community that hasn't had a brewery, in like 50 years or before Prohibition or something crazy. So what's that story? What makes you unique? Is you're maybe doing a unique style of beer? Everyone's in IPA nowadays. Maybe you're doing Belgian beers or something like that. So what is that you can find that makes you different is something interested. And then setting those realistic goals. So let's say that you need to raise $50,000. So let's create some different levels. Okay, let's maybe set a low goal. Maybe we want to raise $5,000, and $5,000 will give us enough money to maybe open our tasting room. So that's like the first goal. If you reach that, it's great. Then if you go to the next goal, let's say it's $10,000. Well, if we get that, we can do our tasting room, and then we can get that will pay for part of our fermenter or something. So kind of go up from there, and what's really realistic. If you say I want to raise $50,000, it's going to be really tough. One thing to consider with this is I have some friends that have raised 20, 30 grand, but they have big followings, maybe on social media, or a gentleman in Portland, Oregon has a cidery called Cider Riot. It's a nano cidery, and he's a beer editor for Northwest Brewing News. He is very well known in the beer scene, especially in the Portland area, and so he's got a great following. So what is your following that you have? And build that following up before you even do that campaign. Create everything. What's your email? What's your email marketing list and everything? And I'm sure you guys probably talked about MailChimp's a great platform I use. Find a great create that list and everything. Start building the momentum before you even do it. Say, hey guys, we're gonna be doing a campaign in a month or whatever. I'd love to be. Can I send you some information in the future? So those are things that are successful. And then while you're doing it, okay, great. Today's the big day. I sent a blast email out to all my friends. What's your follow-up activity? What's your additional touch points? What are you? How are you following up with these people? So those are some things, and then also the prizes. What are unique prizes you can provide to them? Yeah, you can do keychains and a shout out on, give me a buck, I'll give you a shout out on Twitter or something. There's all types of things like that. What I personally like to see is something that's a unique experience. Maybe you say, okay, well, if you have this level of $500, we'll name a beer after you, which this is getting more common nowadays as well. But another thing you can do, whether it's through the crowdfunding that you do on one of these sites, or maybe just you're doing locally, you're just doing a small, angel run with friends and family. Maybe you say, hey guys, if you give me $2,000, I'm going to name this fermenter after you. I have friends in the brewery industry that have done that before. They'll do something, so you're always tied to that part of that brewery, so something kind of special. So think of something that's a unique experience. Maybe they come brew a beer with you. So those are the things that I think that people are looking for to kind of make it happen. Because really, if you're trying to raise a lot of money, you can only get $25 to so many people. It's going to take a lot of people versus some of these higher tiers that are, $500, $1,000, and so forth.
Yeah, those are some great creative suggestions, Kerry. So we have a few questions about crowdfunding, and then we'll move kind of to more, it looks like we've got some general social media questions. So Justin is asking, what about using crowdfunding websites as more of a marketing exercise than a fundraising program? More of a marketing exercise than a fundraising program?
Good, but you have to look at your perspective. You're doing that and you fail. Is it good or bad to fail on a Kickstarter? Like what? And honestly, Kickstarters take a lot of energy. They're not something, hey, I'm going to put this up. I forgot what I read something recently about it. People are spending like 100 hours on a Kickstarter campaign because they're researching. Here's another thing I should have mentioned before is that what I would do, and I do a radio segment about like beer and technology on a Portland radio station stuff, and I use Kickstarter a lot because people have really cool, funky ideas on there. And I do searches and I see what's out there, and I've researched, like for my friend, he did that movie, and I researched all these other movies that are out there, and I found which ones were successful, which ones weren't. The ones that were successful were not trying to raise $30,000. They're trying to raise like $1,000 or something, and they hit it. So doing research on these sites themselves is very helpful. But I personally wouldn't use it just as a marketing ploy. I think you can put your money, your efforts towards something else that's well worth it. And then there's a couple now specific websites for crowdfunding. So there's what is it? Let's see, craftfund.com is one of them, and then the other one is, I have that. I'll have to find the other one. I forgot the other one off the top of my head. But there's two different basically newer crowdfunded sites that are specific to craft beer.
Wow.
The craft fund, people can just set up kind of like an investor profile. When I was raising money, there's a website called Angels List and Gust, and you create your own profile on there for people that are interested. Has like your business plan, things like that. So there's sites like that for beer that are trying to do that now with this niche market. So it might be something that's good to look into. The other challenge is they have a much smaller audience than a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. So there's kind of those things where, I'm sorry?
Oh, I said right. Yeah, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah.
So that's kind of one of those things where you kind of need to do your own due diligence on those other kind of sites out there and see what their payouts are. Their commission fees that they charge and everything. So those are kind of the ways I would look at it personally.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, so Justin here has a question to kind of broaden this discussion around social. So he's saying, Great Beer and Untapped are examples of beer geek sites, which are great, but where do you think placing initial energy and time is worthwhile in the social spectrum? So I think kind of maybe what I'm hearing, Justin, is where you can find a little bit more of a general, broader audience for your beer on social.
Yeah, Twitter and Facebook are obviously two great places to start. Another thing that's interesting would be using Instagram, and kind of doing, let's say, your beer porn, if you will. When I did a project a long time ago for a brewery in Portland called Hopworks, I gave them a proposal, and basically I said, people want to know what you're doing. Like, let's start, taking pictures of what you're doing, what you're brewing, and show a personality behind the brewery and stuff. So you'll start getting a following if you start providing content. I think one of the things when I used to work for a social strategy company, we used to always say, when you're tweeting and Facebooking, depending on what your profile is about, if it's all about like promotion, you're kind of self-promotion all the time. But typically in social, you know, it's like 90% being useful content, and then maybe 10% kind of like self-content, like kind of spammy, not really spammy, but talking about yourself. Because you just say how great you are all the time and everything, people are going to stop following. If you talk about new beers you're brewing or like something kind of strange, unique that happened, people like to see it all the time. I love seeing that kind of stuff. Or maybe you have a collaboration beer you're doing with maybe your friend has a really established brewery and you're doing a collaboration beer with them. So I would start kind of focusing on just the more popular sites like that first, and kind of go from there. Another thing to think about too is your brewery. Is it production only? Are you gonna have a tasting room on site? Is there gonna be a restaurant on site? Because if that's the case, then you should start definitely looking at these places, you know, Yelp and Google Places and all these different websites from a local's perspective. Because when people do Google searches for you know beer Portland, Oregon, you want to make sure you're relevant in that search. So maybe it turns out that you're the only show in town, or maybe there's a couple other breweries in town and people are doing Google searches and they're finding you through Yelp or another site, and then someone writes a great review on you about Yelp, says, oh, their beer's great. So I personally would kind of start with kind of the generalized sites initially. I think they make the most sense because you're going to get your bigger bang for your buck that way.
Great. So I'm hearing. So I guess my follow-up question, Kerry, is which, and you've answered this a little bit, but maybe just to reiterate, which of the main kind of general sites have you found there to be a pretty big craft beer community? And I've heard Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It sounds like we've got a lot of, and I've seen a lot of hashtags on Instagram, like you said, the beer porn. What are there any other sites that you know specifically have a pretty decent beer crew?
I wouldn't really. I mean, I would not say Pinterest is more female-oriented as a demographic, if I'm correct. You know, we keep up on this more than I do, since you do the strategy. Not that you're a female, that's why, but because you do the strategy and stuff. I don't do that anymore. So, you know, I think these other sites are great to use and everything, but it just gets back to how much time do you have in the day, and you want to write a strategy saying every day I'm going to talk about these things on Twitter and Facebook or whatever. And I think the other website I would pay attention to is definitely Yelp. There's no question. Yelp is they do a lot of parties. I'm friends with the community manager here in Portland who runs Yelp here, and he's very active in supporting a lot of craft beer events. In fact, he's actually sponsored some of my craft beer events that I do. So I think Yelp would be a great one. Google will be a great one. Probably any other one that Lisa thinks is relevant as well. I mean, it's just, I think those are a great starting point, because you get to realize that people are looking for more than just beer itself. I mean, especially if you're a brew pub, they're looking for food and everything. Another thing to take a point is when people are traveling. I travel, and I plan my vacations around going to beer places and stuff. And I want to see what's in town. I use the different websites and stuff, but I also use Google a lot because it does a good job. And depending on your business and you have the time, maybe start looking at some of these different travel websites, like TripAdvisor and things like that. And that's really if you have like a tasting room that's open very often in a brew pub and stuff like that. You gotta start off kind of small with all this kind of stuff, because you're gonna get overwhelmed with it. So I don't know if that was the best answer, but it's kind of, every business is a little bit different, unfortunately. So there's not really one great answer on that one.
Right. No, that's a great answer, Kerry. I would follow up. I mean, so the follow up to that is, who is your audience, right? So maybe if you were, if you're a craft brewer who specifically is targeting women, maybe your brand is around chicks who dig beer, then maybe Pinterest would be a really smart place for you to be, because Kerry's right. Pinterest is primarily, demographically speaking, is mostly women still. I mean, there are more men coming on board, but it's still mostly women. And in comparison, Google Plus, let's say, is mostly tech is guys, like geeky kind of science type. So kind of determining the key demographic on these platforms and seeing if it matches who you're trying to target for your beer is a really good way to kind of help you choose. One platform that hasn't been mentioned that I think could be compelling is YouTube. So YouTube is mostly men, like ages 18 to 30, you know, which I'm guessing is probably a key demographic for many of you. So and video is so engaging, right? So even if you can get a few, you know, even if they're kind of, they don't, you know, people's expectations now about high quality video is kind of out the window. You can take your camera phone and get, you know, get the brewer talking about his beer in front of the, you know, in the tasting room or whatever, and put that up on YouTube, and it can be compelling. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity for brewers to use YouTube as well.
How did I forget YouTube? Yes, that's a great one. Yes.
Okay, guys. Well, I'm going to open it up to questions, so you guys can start typing in questions. I have one more question while you guys are thinking about your own questions. We have about 10 minutes or so left with Kerry. So I'm going to kind of go out, Kerry, with what are your thoughts on the future of social beer, you know, apps and just kind of, I guess, digital, you know, the technology in beer space. And you do a radio show on it, so I think it's a great thing to kind of end on in terms of what's pending out there, what's looming in our future, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of, you know, technologies. There's always cool things out there all the time, but when it comes down to it, what was the most important thing for your business? Just because, you know, someone else has an iPhone app, do you really need an iPhone app, you know? One thing that Taplister does is we turn TVs into digital chalkboards. So it shows the beers on tap in, you know, real time. And we have retail establishments new in that bars, growler fill places, and so on and so forth. So for some brands, it's a great fit because it saves them a lot of time, and they kind of have more of a modern feel. If you're like a really traditional looking, let's say Irish pub or Irish brew pub, having a TV in there with tapless on it might not make sense. It doesn't really fit in with your ambiance, possibly. So some of the technology does it really even matter, you know, to some extent. And that kind of goes down to who's your demographic, because if you're in a college town, there'd be more into technology. If you're in like a blue collar town where people aren't really into social media as much, then you're kind of wasting your time on some things like this. They might be turned away from it. You know, if you're in a metropolitan area that you know, is a pretty good tech town and things like that, they're gonna like the bells and whistles, and they're honestly gonna demand them more. So figure out the most important things, and like I said, just communication is number one. How can you communicate where you are? Just simple things. When you're open. I want to know when you're open, you know.
Right. Even the basics. Exactly. Right. What are your hours? Yeah.
So those are some of the things, and then kind of moving forward from a marketing perspective, you know, I'm going to see more and more people are going to be doing, you know, digital forms of marketing. They're going to do less traditional marketing in the newspapers, things like that. So one thing that kind of segues in something I wanted to bring up is know your audience, know your community, and do good networking. If you're a really good networker, get out there and meet the person who's running your Brewers Guild. Meet all the bar owners. I mean, a lot of times, probably a lot of you are already friends with a lot of these people. And that's how I've been able to do a lot of stuff. I just get out, I go out a lot, meet a lot of people, and a lot of like-minded people. One thing that's really important here we haven't talked about are beer bloggers. So right. I spoke at the first Beer Bloggers Conference was in Boulder about, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. And I actually spoke on for beer bloggers, you know, how to make your website mobile friendly, you know, years ago. And beer bloggers, they're passionate about it and everything. They're doing this for free. I mean, they're going to go there, they're going to help promote you, and they're pretty connected. And some of them have a great social following. So what I would do is, you know, kind of start looking on Twitter, especially, and start seeing who's tweeting about things in your area, about beer things. Start following them and start engaging in conversations with them. And then, you know, hey, have a media event. So a very common thing that here, especially in Portland, because I'm involved in it, a lot of breweries will have media events. So I go to a lot of media events where they're say, hey, Kerry, you know, we're having a beer release tonight. You want to come out, check it out. And then, you know, often we'll write information about that, you know, good or bad, whatever it is. But it's content that we're producing about your brewery and events. A lot of local people that are really into good craft beer, especially, they're going to follow these local beer blogs, and they're going to say, oh, cool, there's an event going on. I didn't know about that. So that's a really good start for kind of getting involved with using your core, because if you have a couple of these people that are brand ambassadors for you, it's going to go really far. They're going to tell their friends about it. You know, this whole word of mouth marketing, and that's why social media is so great. Social media is a word of mouth marketing online.
Right. That's a great point, and I think that there's this whole influencer marketing is really becoming big right now, and I think in this space particularly, beer bloggers are a really important community for marketers to consider and kind of smartly figuring out how to approach them. Again, it's you've got to be tactful, and you can't directly ask them to love your beer, but I think you're right. Just being able to, acknowledge that they're experts, acknowledge that they're basically recognize them, right, as being experts in the field, and then inviting them to exclusive events can be a great way to get them to at least to know who you are and maybe write about you. So no questions are coming in. Last call for questions. You guys type it into the chat box. And Kerry, since you were, everybody who comes to these live sessions, I don't know if you guys know this out there, but they volunteer. So Kerry, thank you so much for volunteering your time to be here tonight. I know we're all super busy, and we appreciate it so much. I want you to maybe just take this moment to talk a little bit about what you're doing now, and kind of what your website is for the kind of brewery management software that you're working on.
Yeah, so the website is orchestrasoftware.com. That's a parent company, but orchestratedbeer.com is the one that has all the beer content. And we work with everything from startup breweries to established breweries that are doing 100,000 plus barrels in a year. And what we've done is we've taken kind of the process down to make it easier for you guys to understand how to run your brewery. Because a lot of you guys, it's probably the first time you've been at a brewery before. I know someone mentioned that they've worked at one before. First time you've been at a brewery before. First time you started your own business. And there's times where you just don't know all the processes. No matter what, when you start a business, it's hard to know what you need to do. There's no question about that. And a lot of breweries start off using QuickBooks and Excel, and they think, oh, these are great free tools and stuff. The problem, not to get sales or anything, but the problem with those tools is long-term, they just don't work. They're not designed for craft beer. It's trying to force a circle into this square. And so, my friend started this software company about 5 years ago. We both were in an entrepreneurial class together in Portland, this thing called the Portland 10. It's kind of like a boot camp for startups. And we kind of hit it off. He was kind of starting this thing, and he wanted to bring me on, and I was doing my own thing. And then eventually last year, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to come on board, and it made sense. But we handle everything. It's a centralized solution. It's all in the cloud. We handle your production, inventory management. We handle accounting. It's automated accounting. So like with QuickBooks, what QuickBooks is going to do, you have to enter in a lot of daily bookkeeping. When you're in the brewery and you're entering in your beer, like you're bringing your raw material into stock and everything, it's going to create journal entries for you in the background in your accounting, on the accounting portion of it and everything. So it's everything connected to run the business. You can run reports. And we actually do a user conference every year in Portland that I think we did in November, and we had about 60 breweries come out, everyone from startups to like Firestone Walker. We have clients like Southern Tier, Surly, Founders, so a lot of like really well-known beer geeky places to like you guys, startups and stuff. So that's kind of my sales pitch, but I can send you guys, or I maybe provide Lisa additional information or something. I don't know.
Go ahead and enter your email if you're open to that. Enter your email, Kerry, and then you guys are welcome to reach out to him directly. And then, Kerry, if you'd like to follow up and shoot me any kind of information, I'd be happy to post that in a discussion thread in Canvas for the students as well. So we do have a question. Does orchestrated beer tie into banks the same way that QuickBooks does? Does it use the same API?
We replace QuickBooks, and we actually don't tie into a bank's API. So our software is built upon a platform called SAP, and there's around 40,000 customers around the world using the platform we've designed and catered our software towards for the craft beer industry. We have not done that yet. One reason for that is what we found is a lot of people don't think that the information coming from the banks is always as accurate as they want it to be, so they rather enter it in themselves. What we found so far, at least.
Great. All right, everybody. Well, we've just about hit our tight hour here. Last call. Any more questions? Anyone? Well, I will say, as a wrap up to the students that are here, it's been Really fun working with you all, and this is our last week together. I know John and I have week 8 next week, but it's been a pleasure working with you. You guys were the first cohort for this class, so it's been a learning process, I think, for all of us, and I wish you all the best with your endeavors. And I'm sure you guys just drink lots of beer and have fun, and I know you got a whole lot.
You guys.
Yeah, exactly. I know you got a lot of hard work ahead of you, but bravo for making it through the course. You're very welcome, everybody. Awesome. Yay, love the positive feedback. Please do give feedback via the survey. We do take that really seriously. I take it very seriously, the survey they send out, and I read all the feedback that I get so that I can make the course better for other students. So, Kerry, thank you so much for your time again. And yes, it's time to go drink. Everyone have a wonderful week, and bye-bye. See you later, everyone.